Guys, I'm here at the Scania factory on the assembly line where the engines and transmissions come together. We found our 770 Scania V8 that is going in the R770 that's coming to the USA.
Scania, the legendary name behind some of the world's toughest trucks, has just dropped a bombshell no one saw coming. Workers are stunned, investors are panicking, and the industry is reeling. How could a giant this powerful fall so fast? And what exactly happened behind closed doors that led to this disaster?
So I'm going to give it straight. Cal Freight, 600 truck drivers, they just filed Chapter 11. Truck drivers are emailing me. They're scared. They don't know if they'll have a job. And Cal Freight Inc.
Later this year, the company will open a new manufacturing hub in Rugao, China, after investing around 2 billion euros in the facility. This is not a small satellite operation designed to serve only local customers. According to Scania's leadership, about half of the trucks assembled there are expected to be exported to markets outside China. That means this site will be integrated into the company's wider global supply chain. Rather than acting as a purely domestic outpost, the decision to build in China comes at a time when the heavy vehicle market is becoming increasingly competitive, particularly in Asia. Domestic Chinese truck makers have been developing products faster and at lower costs than many of their international rivals. And local demand has rebounded strongly since the pandemic years. By establishing a base within China, Scania is aiming to reduce production costs, shorten delivery times for Asian customers, and be better positioned to compete head-to-head with regional brands that have significant home market advantages. Proximity to customers is not the only reason for this move. Logistics costs, tariffs, and currency fluctuations can make exporting heavy trucks from Europe to Asia an expensive undertaking. By manufacturing within China, Scania can cut some of those costs and limit the exposure to import duties that could make its vehicles less competitive on price. This approach mirrors what other global truck and equipment manufacturers have done in recent years, setting up local plants in large or fast-growing markets to avoid the financial penalties that come with long-distance exports. While the Chinese facility represents an opportunity for Scania to strengthen its presence in Asia, it is also part of a broader plan to make the company's production network more flexible. With the Rugao plant expected to supply multiple markets, Scania can adjust output depending on demand trends in different regions. If European sales slow, but demand in Southeast Asia rises, for example, the Chinese facility could pick up the slack. Likewise, if domestic Chinese demand cools, the plant can shift focus to export markets. The scale of the investment in Rugao shows that Scania is taking the strategic shift seriously. 2 billion euros is a substantial amount for a single facility, particularly in an industry where profit margins can be thin and capital expenses are closely scrutinized. It signals confidence not just in the Chinese market, but in the plant's role as a central pillar of Scania's future production strategy. It also suggests the company expects this investment to pay off over the long term, both through cost savings and new revenue opportunities. China itself has become a hub for automotive innovation, especially in electrification and digital systems. Many Chinese commercial vehicle makers are already rolling out electric trucks and experimenting with advanced driver assistance technologies. By having a manufacturing presence in the country, Scania can potentially tap into local supply chains for batteries, motors, and electronic components. This could speed up its own electrification efforts while keeping costs competitive. However, the decision is not without risks. Setting up a plant in China that will export globally raises questions about trade policy, especially given recent tensions between China and several of Scania's key export markets. Tariffs or other trade restrictions could affect the economics of exporting from the Rugao site. In addition, operating in China requires navigating different regulatory, labor, and cultural environments compared to Sweden or other European countries. Ensuring that quality, safety, and brand standards are maintained across different regions will be an ongoing challenge. There is also the matter of perception. For some customers, particularly in Europe, a Scania truck has traditionally been associated with Swedish engineering and manufacturing. Shifting part of the production to China could prompt concerns among buyers who value the brand's European roots. This is a challenge that other vehicle manufacturers have faced when they move production abroad. Scania will need to communicate clearly about how its production processes and quality controls will ensure that trucks built in Rugao meet the same standards as those assembled in Europe. Internally, the company is likely to focus on integrating the new plant smoothly into its existing global network. That involves coordinating with suppliers, managing logistics, and training a local workforce to handle Scania's specific manufacturing requirements. Since about half the plant's production is expected to be exported, aligning it with international standards for emissions, safety, and performance will be essential. This will require close cooperation between engineering teams in Sweden and operations staff in China. From a market standpoint, the new plant offers a base to serve not just China but also surrounding regions where heavy trucks are in demand. Southeast Asia, Australia, and parts of the Middle East could all potentially receive trucks from Rugao, depending on market conditions. This flexibility is especially valuable in the commercial vehicle industry, where demand can be cyclical and sensitive to economic conditions. One factor influencing the timing of the Rugao project is the pace of change in global logistics and manufacturing costs. The disruptions of recent years, from pandemic supply chain issues to spikes in freight prices, have pushed many manufacturers to rethink their production strategies. Building closer to end markets is a way to reduce reliance on long, complex supply chains that are vulnerable to delays and cost increases. Scania having a large-scale facility in China is a step toward diversifying its manufacturing footprint and reducing potential bottlenecks. The plant's role in Scania's long-term plans may also tie into its electrification strategy. As heavy truck makers increasingly move towards zero-emission vehicles, being close to battery suppliers and component manufacturers becomes more important. China is home to some of the world's largest battery producers, and the local supply chain for electric drivetrains is more mature than in many other parts of the world. This could give Scania a competitive edge in developing and producing electric trucks for both domestic and export markets. At the same time, the Rugao facility could be used to produce traditional internal combustion engine trucks for markets where electrification is slower to take hold. Many countries in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East still have limited infrastructure for electric heavy vehicles, and diesel trucks remain the practical choice. This means the plant will need the capability to build multiple powertrain types depending on where the trucks are going. The investment also reflects the increasing importance of Asia in the global commercial vehicle market. While Europe and North America remain significant, the fastest growth in demand is coming from Asian markets. Population growth, urbanization, and infrastructure development projects are driving the need for transport and logistics services, which in turn boosts demand for trucks and buses. Scania's presence in China positions it to capture some of that growth directly without relying solely on exports from Europe. For competitors, Scania's move will be closely watched. Other major truck makers have also expanded their manufacturing capacity in Asia, but the decision to make such a large investment and to allocate half the production for export is a bold step. It could reshape how Scania competes globally, especially if the Rugao plant can deliver cost savings without compromising quality. While the opening of the Rugao plant is a significant milestone, it is not the only element in Scania's strategy. The company has been investing in technology, electrification, and digital services to adapt to changes in the transport industry. However, the physical location of production remains a core factor in cost competitiveness and market reach. By committing to manufacturing in China, Scania is signaling that it intends to be a truly global player with production assets positioned strategically around the world. Immediately, Scania found itself in a tight spot. Northvolt was not just another supplier, it held a major customer-supplier relationship with Scania and represented a strategic piece of its electrification vision. Scania had been relying heavily on Northvolt batteries for its upcoming range of electric trucks. When Northvolt's liquidity became critical, Scania stepped in with financial support, lending around $100 million to help Northvolt through the Chapter 11 process. Beyond the loan, Scania's involvement went well beyond financing. In early 2025, it was reported that Scania had a team embedded at Northvolt's flagship facility in Skellefteå to assist with day-to-day operations. This was a hands-on effort to bolster quality and output while the restructuring was underway. But even with that support, the disruption in battery supplies was real. Scania warned that it would miss its 2025 target for reducing emissions largely due to the lag in rolling out battery electric vehicles, something directly tied to the shortages and delays from Northvolt. Realizing that sticking with a single provider was no longer viable, Scania rapidly sought to diversify its battery supply chain. By March 2025, the company announced it had secured additional battery cells from other suppliers, reducing the risk of future disruptions. This move underscored how vital battery supply is. Without it, Scania's electrification plans risk falling off track, delaying its shift into zero-emission vehicle. Then came a decisive strategic move. In February 2025, Scania agreed to acquire Northvolt's industrial battery division known as Northvolt Systems Industrial. This part of Northvolt specialized in systems for off-road and heavy-duty applications. Battery packs, used in sectors like construction, mining, and material handling. By April, the deal was confirmed formally by Scania in agreement with a court-appointed trustee overseeing Northvolt's insolvency. The acquisition included the division's production facilities and research and development center, spanning locations in Gdansk, Poland, and Stockholm, Sweden, and involved around 260 employees. Scania said the acquisition was aligned with its ambition to strengthen capabilities in off-road electrification and secure long-term competitiveness. Importantly, the deal wasn't intended to bail out Northvolt in its entirety, but to preserve and integrate valuable manufacturing and R&D expertise relevant to Scania's heavy industrial market. While Scania was absorbing that division, Northvolt's core business imploded. In March 2025, Northvolt filed for bankruptcy in Sweden as well, marking one of the country's largest industrial insolvencies ever. Observers noted that the collapse was a heavy blow to Europe's hopes of building a homegrown battery industry capable of challenging Asian suppliers. Northvolt had raised more than $15 billion over the years and had an order backlog reportedly worth tens of billions. But overexpansion, operational failures, and financing withdrawals, including a multi-billion euro order cancellation from a major customer, tipped it over the edge. From Scania's perspective, the loss of Northvolt as a reliable supplier meant more than just an operational headache. It threatened a cornerstone of its electrification roadmap. The company was forced to re-examine how it sourced batteries, with a sharper focus on multiple suppliers and vertical integration. In fact, Scania's move to take over Northvolt Systems Industrial started to give it control over at least part of the battery ecosystem, particularly in heavy-duty and industrial applications. This could improve resilience and future readiness. As part of its supply chain diversification, Scania maintained relationships with other battery producers, though it did not publicly name them. Its leadership emphasized that Scania was receiving more battery cells from Northvolt than it could use at one point, but to protect its operations, it had to secure alternate sources too. Scania's strategy highlights a broader lesson for automotive and industrial manufacturers. Electrification is not just about developing vehicles, it's about securing stable, scalable supply of critical components. Batteries are the heart of electric trucks, and any disruption reverberates through planning, manufacturing, emissions forecasting, and reputation. When Northvolt collapsed, Scania's quick response, stepping in with loans, helping with operations, diversifying suppliers, and acquiring key assets, showed how rapidly a company must adapt to retain its trajectory. But there are nuances and drawbacks. Taking over the industrial battery division may help Scania build competency, but it doesn't fully replace Northvolt's scale or expertise in cell production. Scania still needs reliable high-volume battery cells to power electric trucks at the scale it plans. Building that capability internally could take time and resources. Moreover, the bankruptcy underscores how fragile many new companies are, especially those attempting rapid scaling in capital-intensive sectors like battery manufacturing. Meanwhile, Scania's actions may raise expectations that it will build its own battery production backbone, or at least secure firm agreements with multiple suppliers. The move also may strengthen Scania's presence in heavy off-road electrification, possibly positioning the company as a leader in that niche. Overall, Scania's resilience through the Northvolt crisis emphasizes a pragmatic, multi-pronged approach. The ad hoc infusion of capital showed loyalty to a key supply partner. Embedding its staff in Northvolt operations hinted at hands-on risk mitigation. Seeking alternative suppliers revealed strategic flexibility, and acquiring the industrial battery division signals a step toward control over supply chain critical assets. One of the key pieces in Scania's current setup is its battery assembly facility in Södertälje, Sweden. This site, which began operations in September 2023, is dedicated to assembling battery modules and packs for electric trucks and buses. By producing these components in-house, Scania is aiming to secure greater control over one of the most critical parts of an electric vehicle. The assembly plant is connected directly to Scania's adjacent truck production line, which means battery packs can be installed almost immediately after being built. This reduces transport time, improves production flow, and helps maintain quality oversight. It also reinforces the company's commitment to keeping significant parts of its supply chain close to its Swedish roots. At the same time, Scania's strategy is not limited to Europe. The new manufacturing hub in China, due to open in October 2025, is a statement of intent. Half of its output is planned for export, which means that the factory will act as both a local supplier for Asian markets and a global contributor to Scania's distribution network. This dual role could prove valuable in smoothing out production fluctuations in different regions. If European demand dips, while Asian demand surges, the Rugao plant can redirect trucks accordingly. Conversely, if demand in China slows, the same production lines can serve other international customers. But this expansion brings its own set of challenges. Trade relationships between China and other countries are under constant scrutiny, and the possibility of tariffs or new trade restrictions always lingers. For a company that intends to export Chinese-built trucks to multiple markets, the stability of these trade routes is crucial. The heavy truck industry is somewhat less exposed to certain consumer-sensitive tariffs than the car industry, but it is still vulnerable to cost increases if component or parts imports are targeted by trade measures. Scania will need to keep a close watch on these developments to avoid unexpected cost pressures. In terms of market positioning, Scania has set itself clear electrification targets. It previously outlined plans for around 10% of its European sales to be electric by 2025 and approximately 50% by 2030. Hitting these numbers will depend not just on production capacity, but also on the readiness of customers to adopt electric heavy vehicles. Factors such as charging infrastructure, regulatory incentives, and the total cost of ownership compared to diesel will all play a role. In markets where these conditions are favorable, Scania could see adoption accelerate. In others, progress may be slower. An important part of Scania's forward path is maintaining its connection with existing customers while reaching out to new ones. The traditional Scania buyer values reliability, durability, and performance. For many operators, the brand is tied to a long history of quality engineering. Introducing new technologies, whether that's electric drivetrains, digital connectivity, or advanced safety systems, means proving that these innovations can meet the same high standards. It also requires ensuring that service networks and spare parts availability keep pace with the new technology. If a truck operator in a remote location cannot get a replacement battery pack or the necessary software update in time, confidence in the brand can suffer. This is why Scania's service and maintenance strategy is as important as its product strategy. Electric trucks have different maintenance needs from diesel models, and service personnel must be trained to handle high-voltage systems safely. Charging infrastructure also becomes part of the operational equation, meaning Scania may need to work with customers to plan charging solutions that fit into their logistics schedules. These aspects go beyond the product itself and touch on how Scania integrates into its customers' businesses. Technology partnerships are another area where Scania has expanded its reach. The company has expressed interest in collaborating with tech firms to develop smart features and AI-based safety tools. Such systems could help improve efficiency, predict maintenance needs, and enhance driver safety. However, introducing this level of technology into heavy trucks requires balancing innovation with practicality. Truck operators tend to value reliability above cutting-edge gadgets. New systems must prove their worth in day-to-day operations rather than just in theory. While much of the focus is on the future, Scania cannot afford to lose sight of its heritage. The company's reputation was built on vehicles that could endure tough conditions and high mileage without compromising performance. As it transitions to electric and potentially autonomous models, it will need to ensure that these values carry over. That means rigorous testing, robust build quality, and a clear demonstration that the new generation of vehicles is as dependable as the ones that came before. The broader economic environment adds another layer of complexity. Rising material costs, Fluctuations in energy prices and shifting regulatory requirements can all influence production costs and pricing strategies. Electric truck production in particular depends heavily on the price of raw materials like lithium, nickel, and cobalt. Volatility in these markets can impact battery costs and, by extension, vehicle pricing. Scania's ability to manage these variables will be a key factor in maintaining its competitive edge. There is also the question of how the new production facilities will interact with environmental regulations. Building trucks in China for export to regions with strict emissions or sustainability rules means ensuring that manufacturing processes meet those standards. This could involve using renewable energy in production, managing supply chain emissions, and maintaining transparency about sourcing. Customers, regulators, and investors are increasingly looking at the environmental footprint of manufacturing, not just the emissions from the vehicle in operation. For Scania's investors, the coming years will be a test of the company's ability to grow and adapt without losing profitability. The upfront investments in electrification, production expansion, and technology development are significant. The return on those investments will depend on how quickly markets adopt electric trucks and how efficiently Scania can produce and deliver them. If adoption is slower than expected, the payback period for these investments could lengthen, putting pressure on margins. Another consideration is competition. Scania operates in a market with strong rivals, including other European manufacturers and increasingly capable Chinese brands. Some competitors may be able to undercut prices, especially in emerging markets. Scania will need to differentiate itself through quality, service, and total cost of ownership advantages, rather than trying to match the lowest price on the market. At the operational level, integrating the Rugao plant into Scania's global manufacturing network will be a major undertaking. Processes, quality control systems, and training must be aligned across different continents to ensure that a truck built in China is indistinguishable in quality from one built in Sweden. Communication between teams will need to be seamless, and production planning must account for differences in supply chains, lead times, and local regulation. Customer perception will also play a role. Some buyers may welcome the expanded capacity and potential for shorter delivery times. Others may be skeptical about vehicles built outside Europe, even if quality standards are maintained. Scania's marketing and customer engagement will have to address these perceptions directly, highlighting the benefits without dismissing the concerns,